Hey there, how you doing? Welcome to another episode of Making Myself. On this one, I wanted to touch on something that resonated with me the other day. When someone asked, okay, if we wanted a better world, which attribute should we, um, let's say, empower? Or which personal attribute should we improve? Or should be improved, right? So from these, most of people might answer, okay, we need a little bit, of course, the classics, right? More love, or loving people, more communication, more empathy, right? All those are the classics, and for sure, those make sense. Those make a lot of sense. But I've been reading a book lately from Tim Hartford. It's called the 10 Rules to Comprehend the World. And in the end, like at the end of the book, it kind of clarifies some of the things that how we can really improve the world. And it's really interesting. It explains the story about Dan Kahan. That's Dan, Dan, Kahan. And that's a professor from Yale. And what he did was kind of a proof how we as people we are biased when we see how the people or groups of people that are aligned with us, we tend to just believe them, despite the having facts that kind of show the opposite of what they're saying, right? For instance, what Dan Can showed was, okay, he showed some images of a demonstration, uh, and he kind of tricked the students, right? Some students, of course, they were kind of from the, let's say, a perspective, political perspective from Democrats, and other was were Republicans, right? And as you know, Democrats and Republicans have different beliefs in certain aspects in politics, right? Of course. So what he said was, okay, those are the same. We're talking about the same images and same footage, right? And in one case, he mentioned that okay, this demonstration is from a group of people that it's rallying against abortion, right? Abortion rights, and he kind of asked for the students to assess what level of how violent they were behaving, how um, justified were the actions or of the demonstrators, right? Like if they were aggressive, if they were making sense on what they were doing, and so on and so forth, right? And another group of students also that were they have like different perspectives in politics, the same images and same footage. He said, okay, those are a group of people demonstrating and rallying for the gay rights, right? Which is kind of on the opposite of the spectrum on the politics, right? So interestingly enough, what he demonstrated is that no matter what are the facts, no matter what's going on, we tend to just believe what looks like it's gonna be someone that comes from our tribe or group of reference. We're just gonna believe it, and we're not gonna ask a lot of questions, right? That's in general terms. So he demonstrated how biased we are, and that's normal, right? Like I think we mentioned that previously in other episodes, how our brain it's a machine of saving energy. Like we just need to save energy, so we're kind of lazy. We're wired to be lazy by default, right? And those are one of the things that cause more problems because when let's say when we tend to believe stuff without asking questions or without putting a lot of effort in understanding, it's when the diplomatic activities fail eventually because we don't want to listen, we don't want to discuss, we don't want to understand. And it's when kind of when politics fail as well, it's when the things get a little bit more violent, right? And aggressive. And it's where we don't want to be. Those are the situations where we don't want to be. So it's really interesting how he demonstrated that, like from a politics perspective, but it applies to anything really, not only in politics. That most people, we just believe what our group of reference say, or what we believe our group of reference say. So that's kind of the the foundation of this episode, to understand that part, so we can go to the next one and understand what can be a factor that can solve for this. So the cool part is that Duncan, after this, he kind of got fed up seeing all these differences between people, and he made a set of experiments as well that where he discovered something really interesting. He discovered how one attribute from people could kind of make them connect somehow, and the people, regardless of which party or political perspective had, whether it's Democrat, Republican, or whatever it is, he demonstrated that with this attribute, which is curiosity, kind of made the people to connect. And that makes a lot of sense once once we kind of connect the dots, right? Because out of curiosity, it's when we want to understand something, and it opens our minds, right? And then we start seeing the evidence and the reality as it is, or as much as close as a reality as we can get, right? So we're not fixed on specific mindsets that that might be wrong. And when we're open and we do the effort, and that's the tricky part, right? Like, we need to do the effort of understanding the other part, then we'll see reality as it is, and then that creates all those attributes after, in terms of understanding and better communicating with the other part, because we understand the other party. That means having a little bit more empathy, right? And then we have the arguments, and we know what's causing the other part to behave like they do, right? And that facilitates communication. And when there's communication, there's diplomacy. And if there's diplomacy and politics, right, then we can talk and we don't need to fight. And that's one of the things that we're missing in nowadays, especially, right, all over the world, which is better than many, many, many years ago, but still, like, there's some ground that we need to cover yet. So this attribute, which is curiosity, it's one of the main things that are going to be improving the world in the future. So we need to make an effort in terms of be a little bit more curious, and yeah, like, push our knowledge, so we can know and we can see all the scenarios from different perspectives, and that will just enrich a lot of our world as well. And just so you think about it, right? Like, because then it's hard to know how curious we are, or measure how curious we are, because we might think, okay, curiosity comes from acknowledging a gap in knowledge, right? Oh, I don't know this, so I really want to learn about this stuff. And sometimes another thing that Dan Kahan demonstrated as well with other set of experiments, which I will kind of mention now, for sake of simplicity as well, is that we may think that we know something at a specific, depth, but in the end, if someone calls it out, sometimes we actually realize that we didn't know as much as we thought. And this simple example that they put, it's about, okay, if I asked you how the flush mechanism in a toilet works, right? If you could score that from 1 to 10, 10 being the, I really know how it works perfectly, maybe we would score like, I don't know, I would say that I would know 8 or 9, right? Because it's easy. Like we kind of push the button, right, and then the water flushes, right? And that's a pretty simple mechanism. Or you pull the chain, right, and then the water flushes. But it's on the next question where it kind of demonstrates that we might not know as much as we think, right? Because the next question, when they did this experiment in the university, they said, okay, so you mentioned that you know 8 or 9 out of 10 how it works. So let me know how it works. And then is when you start thinking, okay, so there's this mechanism, and then I pull from here, and then, but you need to think a lot of stuff. Like there's a water limit, right? A deposit that needs to get filled, and then there's something that needs to stop the water from flushing. So the whole mechanism in itself, it's not that simple if you start thinking about the specifics, right? And that's when we realize, and that's also related to the Dunning-Kruger effect, that sometimes at the very beginning we think that the Dunning-Kruger says, well, we feel that overconfident when we start learning about something, and as we go farther along on knowing more stuff, then we're not as confident, right? But at the very beginning, our self-image of how much did we know about something was way out of reality because we didn't know as much. So this kind of, it's a perfect example of this. So when we think, okay, I know about that stuff already, right? So I don't need to be curious. I don't need to know what's behind this. But if you ask the next question, okay, let's think through. Let's double click on here. Let's see how it really works. Then we realize, oh my God, like there's so much to learn yet before I can make a decision, right? And I'm not putting this into like we should ask everything, like double clicking everything, because that would be super exhausting as well. But some issues sometimes are worth double clicking and understanding a little bit better, at least before there's a, I don't want to say a fight, but let's say like some opposite versions of or perspectives that we could run, and we could talk about it with a little bit more knowledge before we jump into conclusions. And that would be the main idea of this episode. Like, curiosity will make a better world for sure, because it will empower communication and understanding among different parties. So I hope that you liked that episode. And yeah, thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.